That's right.
No, that's for you. How are you, man?
How are you? Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't know if you
I mean, that's the thing that's really struck us, is that for the last 6 months, we've just been really relationally connecting with the church and feeling like, wow, God is really directing us to the churches that really have the same heart that we do. Of course, it's the heart of God. To see His church awaken to first love intimacy. Mobilize the church to the Great Commission. First, you have to mobilize them to the secret place. And so those kind of became the two kind of key pieces of DNA that we felt the Lord was calling us to really speak into the bride and call the bride into. I began to study this out in the scriptures with Jesus teaching us about the Lord's Prayer and saying, pray this, that God's kingdom would come on earth as it is in heaven. How many have heard that? Mm-hmm. That God's kingdom, that's the end of the story, is that God's kingdom is going to come down from heaven. And God is going to dwell among His people. That's the end game. From front to finish, start to finish, He wants to have a place to dwell with His people. Let's go. We're going to be in Dallas and Detroit and the Twin Cities and San Francisco next year. I mean, this stuff's just popping all over the place. We're not managing it. God's just raising up leaders in different cities. He may be calling you to come invest in another city, because the truth is, and I hope you're at this place, we need each other. Like, not just the church, the whole church in the city, we need each other, but the churches in America need each other, man. I mean, we got issues, right? I mean, we need to come together because of what we're coming into as a nation. So not only that, we believe He's calling us to bring the prayer room out into the city streets.
Amen.
I don't know if you know this, but when we worship God in public places, the same thing happens as when we worship God in church.
Yeah.
He comes down, man. It's so cool. It's like He's super consistent. You know, when we worship in parks and in subway cars, the glory of God comes down and begins to shift the atmosphere. We've had people come to Christ, and I think every trip we've come here, we just bring a guitar on the subway and start worshiping Jesus, and the Holy Spirit comes down, and all of a sudden there's a guy next to us who starts bawling. What do you think's happening?
Yeah.
He's getting saved, man. Yeah. God's coming, touching this guy, and then we share the gospel. And I mean, it's so powerful, you guys, if we can lay hold of this. And there's something about public adoration of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like we're not hiding who we're worshiping, man. Yeah. Like Jesus is it, you know. He is he's everything, man. When we lift up His name, people are shocked. You know, I've never seen believers passionately worshiping God. Do you realize how much of a testimony that is to a pre-believer? Yeah. When they see you adoring Jesus with all your heart and all your mind and all your, they're like, what is going? They're drawn because the presence of God begins to draw them into that kingdom reality. Get our hearts right, get filled up with the Spirit of God, and then just go out and leak Jesus all over New York City. That's the big strategy. Yeah. And so then get on the subways, go out to the outreach locations, come back, and then we debrief and share testimonies. And it's a time that's very encouraging, because there are people who go out and nothing amazing happens, on one particular outreach, but they come back and they start hearing all these other testimonies, and they get encouraged again to go back out. And then when you're feeling exhausted, because that's a lot, man, a 6-hour outreach, all of a sudden fresh troops come pouring in. They're like, we're headed out. You're like, yeah, man, this is so awesome. It just never stops. But it's an event called the King's Banquet. And it's rooted in Luke 14 and the parable of the wedding feast of the Lamb at the end of the age. The idea of it is you rent out a space and do a 5-course white linen, no holds barred event for the least of these, for the poor in the city. You bring them in, and literally, it's not a soup kitchen. You're doing literally 5-course dinner. There's awesome music. People share testimonies of coming out of that lifestyle. So people from the Bowery who have success stories, and Salvation Army and other ministries that are in the city that are connected, they come and share. And then we preach the gospel. And after the gospel is preached, we basically allow the believers are sprinkled at their tables. So they're doing the ministry of listening the whole night. And then people who want to come to the Lord, they lead them to the Lord and then get down and wash their feet. And it's one of the most powerful things I've ever been part of. I mean, Jesus comes.
Yeah.
Jesus comes into the room. Many testimonies of people who said they felt like Christ literally took over their body as they were washing the feet of the poor, and it just wrecks people. So it's kind of a cool capstone, because the whole week then you can be handing out invitations to this event at the end, and it kind of combines, you know what I mean, that individual one-on-one thing with more of a big corporate type of outreach. So please, as the Spirit, you know, either witnesses with you.
So I would just ask if you would pray about, you know, giving us a sermon, you know, that we could have a time where we could just, you know, preach about the heart of God for the lost and the Great Commandment and Great Commission, because what we're after is burning hearts, someone who's ignited. I got to share at my church in Connecticut. I was from Connecticut before, and just, you know, got to share a little bit, and 26 people signed up for Love New York. So from Connecticut, they're coming. I was so excited. But yeah, so that's one thing that I'll be in touch with you about, is a mobilization event. So when I say that, that's what I'm talking about, is just a kind of a sermon, a little lengthier time where we can share about the heart of God for the lost.
Drown this city in your mercy, just like you did for me.
That's right.
You wanted to